Hello, I'm just wondering, can you hear me? Because
Yes, no. Fortunately, I can see you and hear you, which is nice. It doesn't happen every time, but yeah, really excited to welcome you along today. Where are you joining us from?
Bristol in the UK, southwest of the UK.
Oh, so are you Joe's neighbour? Joe Leach.
Not really neighbour, but yeah, close enough.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We'll get started. So I will jump off and I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Mel. Hi, thanks everyone for staying back and listen to my talk. It's a long day for everyone, so I will try to keep it exciting as much as I can. So a bit about myself. So in the course of being in the UX and culturalization industry for almost 15 years now, I've wrote a book, a pocket book for international user research. I'm also editor of Smarty magazine, which I believe that most of you know of. I'm also working for myself under Bayer Global as well. So with Bayer Global, my ultimate aim is to empower businesses so that they can offer the best experience to their customers and they can reach out to their customer regardless where they are in the world. That's because a good experience for British might not be a good one for Germans, for example, or Russians or Japanese. So these are the photos that I took when I was traveling in different locations in different countries, mainly to observe, to understand, and to talk to people in these countries so that I can understand and help my clients to understand how things work in this society and how people go about doing certain things, how they behave, and what they need, and also their mentality and attitude as well towards certain aspects and elements. So I miss my travel a lot, as you can tell. I'm sure everyone missed that too. But having said that, despite travel is not possible, there are still a lot of different ways we can be close to the people in different parts of the world and for us to understand what is important to them. So this is one of the things I want to cover in this talk. So while I help companies to define their propositions and global strategy for markets in different countries, the objectives of my support to them often varied. So for example, I worked with Spotify for the last 3.5 years across 18 countries and have been working with their growth team or new market team or premium team from the consumer side as well as the creator label side as well. So the objectives could often range from defining product ideas for one country or region, to identify plans for new market launch, or to exploring different subscriptions model, or to payment methods, or even defining their market strategy for different markets. So there are a lot of different things that you can focus on by understanding the culturalizations element of different countries. So I want to start my talk by talking about David Attenborough's documentary about Galapagos Islands. Not sure you guys have seen it, but if you haven't, I think it's on Sky. If you haven't, yeah, David, exactly. Who doesn't like David? If you haven't seen this documentary, have a look, and it's great. So the Galapagos Islands is situated near the equator of the South America, with more than 500 miles from the coast of mainland Ecuador. It was and still the best place in the world to study evidence of evolution by natural selections. Take the Galapagos penguin as an example. So the closest living relatives of Galapagos penguin is the Magellanic penguin, and it was believed that ages ago some penguins have been carried from southern Chile by storm or ocean currents, and they arrived in Galapagos. And somehow these cold weather birds survived and they multiplied. To adapt to the new environment, the penguins have lost some of their fat and evolved to become smaller as a tactic that helps them to keep cool. And they also have hairless spots on their cheeks, which help them to release heat. These adaptations is not just on their physical appearance, they also have developed behavioral adaptations as well that help them to keep cool. So this including they standing with their flippers extended to aid heat loss. And also they can swim quicker than other penguins, like reaching speeds up to 50 miles per hour underwater. So humans also have adapted to differences, for example, in climate, altitude, and also resource availability. So our body, our gene, our physical features adapt throughout centuries, mostly depending on the environment our ancestors were in. So you might ask, what does this whole evolution theory have to do with your global customers and and your business? And how do these physical differences, for example, your global customers, have impact your business decisions to provide a good customer experience for them? That can be from different levels. So, for example, when it comes to for example, your shop display, it might make sense to showcase your products at a lower heights for some countries, considering that on average, your key customers in those countries might be shorter than the others. So this is exactly what IKEA in India, what they did, because they had their cabinets and their countertops come at a lower height, because in Indian, women tend to be shorter than Europeans and Americans. So I'm pretty sure you have heard of this, or if even yourself might have said this before. So you might say Asia is a few years behind the West, or this country is falling behind, or is catching up in terms of technology use, or in terms of this and that. And we often make such comparisons and conclusions about a country in terms of, for example, their infrastructure, their technology, their economy, or education's level. So it seems to be the case where they always have to be one country has to lead and the other countries have to catch up. And this sounds a bit like this linear human evolution, which we are all familiar with. So where we all start as an ape with big jaws and then ended up with a modern man where we are now. So very straightforward, like start simple and then end advanced. But the truth is, evolution is not like this at all. This is the real evolution. So no one is advanced. Chimpanzee is living alongside with human and spider monkey, and all exist together. So it all starts from one base, and then they evolve differently throughout the centuries. Some species might survive and grow very well, and some might die out along the way. So it's the environment that influences how creatures evolve. So each creature might find their niche and evolve based on their environment. So no one is behind of anyone. So we all evolve very differently. Our culture evolves differently. Our habit evolves differently. Our behaviors evolve differently. And that makes our expectations and needs on different products and services evolve differently as well. That's why we all have a different expectations or needs or requirements when it comes to doing certain tasks. So there's no right or wrong answer, or no right or wrong way. It's just a unique way. So take an example, M-Pesa. I'm sure a lot of you already familiar with this mobile payment, which is very successful in Kenya because it works within its environment and context. So take an example. So M-Pesa is successful. First reason is because there's low percentage of Kenyans have bank account due to poverty, and they have very limited access to the banks. But the country has also have very high penetrations of mobile devices. On top of that, the presence of one single dominant mobile carrier, Safaricom, made it very easy for the offering to be adopted in a faster pace because ultimately people mainly want to use what everyone else is doing as well, the snowball effect. And on top of that, Kenya is also a collectivist society, so social support is very important. You want to support your relatives, your friends, your family as much as you can. But without a bank account, the urban Kenyans have had difficulties in transferring money to support their relatives in rural areas. So M-Pesa solved this problem by allowing them to deposit, to withdraw, or to transfer money via very basic phone, either smartphone or feature phones or these kind of basic phones. It also helps to decrease corruptions and the chances of being robbed as well. So the success of M-Pesa in Kenya is not just by luck or coincidence. It's just exactly what Kenyans need. it solves their problems, it works in their specific environment and infrastructure setup. It fits into their ecosystem. So to duplicate the same solution in other countries with different setup and problems to solve, it probably wouldn't work. So unless you can duplicate every single elements that we just talked about in another country, replicating the exact technology and solution in other markets without in-depth understanding of research is certainly not a wise strategy. So instead of trying to imitate a specific technology or solution which works in one country and put it on the other country, what is most important and useful instead is to first understanding the niche, such as their context and their background, or their beliefs or their customs, history, infrastructure, and then use this aspect to define the society's attitudes and needs and challenges. This does not apply only for payment solutions, of course, but also other sectors. So think about variational evolutions, not transformational evolution. And now let's switch gear a bit and let's talk about the pandemic. Everyone talk about pandemic all the time. It seems that the topic that we talk about now. So we are living through an unprecedented period full of unknowns. Everyone is trying to speculate and guess what the changes might be, and businesses are trying to work out the directions of their industries, where they should be heading towards and how they should prepare for those changes. And since the pandemic starts, we keep starting to kind of get a lot of articles and surveys and opinions and about how consumer behaviors is going to change. And it's all good to predict. But the truth is, none of us have lived through anything like this before. So no one can be certain what exactly will happen next. Yes, certain things will change, but in what way it will change? What does that mean to your business? And it all feels very overwhelming and complicated. It's even more so when it comes to planning and changing strategies for global markets, and when it involves different culture, politics settings, and mentality, and so on. We can already see the differences in how people in different countries responded to pandemic and how they react to their government decisions. For example, in Asia, it's like government say lockdown, they lock down, and quarantine, you quarantine. Like, there's a lot of obeying or respecting the government's decisions. But in the West, we can see there's a lot of difference on that. So businesses are wondering what they should do with their business in each market. What would the changes in their customer behaviors and needs for their industry? And also how much of these changes share globally, and what are the ones that only apply in certain markets? So with so many what and how and whys, and where do you even start? I would actually encourage business to use a different approach to managing your global market and customers. So instead of trying to predict what the behaviors change would be for different countries, and then trying to figure out what you can do to keep up with those changes, I would encourage you to focus on what wouldn't change or what are unlikely to change. So similar advice actually was given by Jeff Bezos several times over the last 20 years to entrepreneurs looking to stay ahead of a fast changing world. His reason of saying not to predict the future is because his point of view is that predicting the future is hard, whereas what is unlikely to change are obvious, the big and fundamental points. So once you identify what they are, you are much more secure positions and place to craft a strategy for your business. So you can be confident that the efforts that you put into them today will still paying you dividends 10 years from now, for example. So this is especially true when it comes to culturalizations. Whether or not you are growing or planning to launch into a new region or market, you can still confidently develop your strategy without needing to know what the future holds by looking into what definitely won't change or understanding what the fundamental things that very unlikely to change for each market. So how do we know what is not going to change? Regardless of what happened to the world or country, a revolutions, so what happened to the country because of a revolutions or because of a pandemic that we're going through, or a natural disaster. There are elements that won't change when you are designing and building a product or service for customer in different countries. So the first one to start with is the first level of culturalization is the fundamental. So I actually created these 3 levels of culturalizations. The first level of culturalizations, the fundamental, is things that it definitely won't change, and you need to actually pay attention to it because it will actually ruin your business very easily. So let's take an example. Take this brand example. Some of you might recognize where I'm heading to. So this example, they have actually made a similar mistakes between 2018 and 2019. So they all faced a backlash in China over political sensitivities. So, for example, their employees have given a presentation in China. They show a map of China that didn't include Taiwan. Whereas in McDonald's, they show an advert in Taiwan that included 2-second clip of a student card that showed Taiwan as a country. And Marriott, they listed Tibet, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan as separate countries in one of their customer questionnaires, but not really their fault. It's more the agency they were using that made that mistake. So you get the gist. These are the geopolitical mistakes that a brand and company should know about and be aware of. But then also you have different type of mistakes that you don't want to offend different regions. So if you are a game player, so you might already play this Call of Duty. So while Call of Duty, Modern Warfare and Warfare 2 and 3, they were not being banned at all, but they had received complaints after players in the Middle Eastern country noticed that in the bathroom to the popular level that they have, there's a picture frame that carrying Islamic text, which translated into English to Allah is beautiful and he loves beauty. So in the Islamic region, it is forbidden for Muslims to utter Allah's names in a toilet or carry books or papers with their name, with his name written on them. So having this Islamic text in the bathroom showed disrespect of the region and traditions of the Muslim gamers. So the publisher quickly apologized and removed the texture from the games before it did any damage. So these are the bare minimum that you have to get it right when it comes to designing for audiences from different countries. So you have geopolitically insensitive elements, or cultural insensitive elements, or religious insensitive element. So get it wrong will bring down your business very easily. And most importantly, these are the elements that wouldn't change or wouldn't easily change, not during or after this pandemic we are going through. And then let's go to the second level, which is the basic. So let's start with the name as a basic. So you probably think that it's just naming, how complicated it could be to design, but there are so many different considerations you have to think of. So for example, the order. So in some countries, such as in majority of Asian countries, in Japan, India, Malaysia, and also some European countries as well, Russia and Hungary, family names will come before first name. So make sure you have the fields in the order, in the right order, so to avoid confusions, because a lot of time people just don't read the labels, and then they might end up putting the wrong names on the wrong fields, and then you'll be capturing the wrong data and then addressing them in the wrong way. And other things to consider as well is middle names. Like not all countries have middle names. So you either want to set that field as optional for those countries or remove it completely if possible. That would be the latter probably is the better option. And then you can think about the names. Some names are longer than the others. And then you need to make sure that the field is a bit bigger or to be able to kind of show the complete name when they enter their names. Also, other things like symbols, hyphens, because a lot of countries, like for example, in Brazil and Spain, Spanish names, they have more than one family name, so you need to cater for that as well. And also space, like sometimes in Asia countries, you have space in their first name, like my name, Chi. It's actually my first name, but it's a lot of time. Even I live in the UK for 17 years now, a lot of company, my banks, they still assume the second Chi is my middle name, and they just remove it whenever they refer me with my full name. Even though every single time I fill in the Chi as my first name. So these are the things you probably don't think is kind of important, but actually when it comes to culturalizations and to show that respect and how much you kind of how much your customer in these different countries meant to you, these are the important elements. So these are, again, a few other different things that you should consider. You might think it's an easy thing when it comes to localization or culturalization. You might not think about it, but there are a lot of elements on that. So even simple things like that could actually change, bring you a big change into your sales or profits or conversions as well. So that's why I have created a series of design guides for different countries, which will cover all these important elements. I'm about to launch now. It's just finishing the final details. I'm going to launch China and Japan first. So if you want to be notified when it's available, go to this link and you can put your emails. I think there's also a field to ask you about what countries you want next as well, because there are so many countries, so you need to prioritize as well. And also I will make it into the way that we will keep updating. I will keep updating if things change, so you can log in, and as things come in, as things change or new updates, then we can put. I will be able to kind of add in very quickly. So these are the two levels of aspect that will not likely to change. But now comes to the third layers, the detail layers. So this layer is slightly complex, but it's also the interesting one. So will behaviors change or needs change? The answer is yes and no. And because with new technology being introduced and developed, we see people's needs and certain behavior change throughout the years. And it's also fair to say that behavior and attitudes for some countries might change faster than others. But one important thing to remember that even when that happens, the fundamental mentality and culture of a country are not likely to change. For example, for the characteristics of a society as a highly collectivist society or hierarchical or family-oriented, these are very unlikely to change across centuries. And very often, these are also the underlying values and factors that will influence how people in different countries behaves and needs and expects as well. So instead of trying to speculate what changes might happen, it is more useful to focus on the fundamental aspects that will not likely to change. I started to write a series of cultural snippets since March when the global travel started to pause. My initial thought was, well, no one can travel. I can't travel. You can't travel. So maybe I can bring the world to you. And from the last few years, I have been traveling so much. But also, I wanted to share some of the knowledge I have about different markets and to demonstrate to companies about how they need to have holistic view and understanding about a country, their society and people, so that they can serve their global customers better. Some of the insights I have shared here as a snippet, it's within 1,300 characters because I wanted to fit within a LinkedIn post. So it's short, but actually full of a lot of information in there. Some of the insights I share in the snippet are examples of what the fundamental aspects which are less likely to change. So for example, in the Philippines, you can see in the guide actually, there's this mentality of I want to get the most out of what I have paid. This mentality is very strong. And there's a local term called ayaw malugi, means I don't want to feel cheated. So whatever I pay, I want to fully use them. So this Tingi culture means that you can buy cooking oil by a cup, or you can buy cigarette by stick, or shampoo by sachet, or garlics in packs of 4 cloves only. So locals only buy what they need, and it was seen as an affordable solution to start with. But throughout the centuries and years, with the result of what is available, even wealthier consumers is now simply buys multiple sachets because it's a habitual and familiar behavior as well. And also in South Korea, there's one culture called pali pali culture. It means like fast or hurry up or quickly. So it's embedded very deeply into South Koreans' daily and working life as well. And this practice of this culture is why the nations was able to achieve that tremendous economic progress in very short time after their 3-year Korean War. Their focus on speed not only led to the world's leading internet speeds and also high-tech gadgets, but also influenced a high efficiency on their public transport and other services. So if you go to their country and take public services, it's amazing how quick and efficient they run as well. So to make sure you have a complete view and understanding about your global customer and markets, you need to think about a holistic sense. So have a holistic approach towards your customers of your global customer and set your global strategy. So if you want to create a usable, applicable, sustainable healthcare solution for locals in Africa country, and you don't just learn about their living and social conditions. You need to learn about how their medical system work currently, and what technology availability they have and limitations, their traditions and belief, history, and which shape how they see and talk about certain health conditions and diseases, so that you can get a full picture and complete ecosystem. So identify what aspect to look into, whether it's history, politics, infrastructure, geography, nature, and then link them together and insight together and give you a full insight. So for example, when I was in Japan for Asana for their work management tool, we learned that there are 2 types of companies in Japan, the traditional Japanese companies and the startup venture companies. So the formal is very hierarchical, like strict with formal approval process, where everyone's role is clearly defined and they stay within their job as defined. So for those who work in this kind of traditional Japanese company, it involves a lot of formality in terms of communication processes. So therefore, it's not right for anyone to just assign tasks or jobs just via the tools, because it is very important to have courtesy chat. You need to know about the other person's workload first before you assigning a task to them. And also you need to make sure that they are capable in completing those tasks, because you don't want to embarrass them because they don't have that skills. So, and also on top of that, a consensus need is to be reached before a decision is made. So in this kind of Japanese traditional company. However, on the same trip with Spotify, it was to understand how to convert physical experience to a good digital experience. In Japan, it was still common to buy CDs, and it's legal to go to stores or libraries to rent an album for £1.80 roughly. And then you can download it and then return it again. And we need to understand why physical experience is important due to their cultural background. It's nothing to do with hierarchical or making decisions anymore in this context. What we were looking for was completely different based on the products and service and the industry we are in. So the same country, but looking into different and relevant elements and aspects. So why is it important to have a complete holistic view of the markets and the people you're serving? If you are solely looking at the collected data or analyze what you gather from user research, for example, there's always an underlying risk where you either only address something very obvious and miss out the opportunity to be innovative, or you might be addressing or focus on the wrong things because what you think you know might not be accurately represent the full truth. For example, your insights might be misinterpreted because due to insufficient information. So let's use this metaphor to describe the holistic concept. Let's say your understanding of a market and your customer is the end picture of a puzzle set. So the more puzzle pieces you put together, the more details you will see, and then the more complete understanding you have with them. If you're only relying on one research approach or using very little resources to help you to paint each puzzle piece, then you might paint incorrect details of the puzzle piece because you only see a fractions and not representing the whole truth. The difference between this puzzle and this analogy is that the puzzle, at least you can see what the end picture is, but when you're doing research about or understanding about countries, you don't have that full picture as a reference. So you're just putting pieces by pieces to see what you can see as you go along. So as an example, a quick example before finishing off the talk. So to create a right digital health products for African community, alongside with my client at Babylon Health last year this time, we spent a week and a half visiting HIV, TB, and mental health patients in Kenya and Rwanda at their homes. And we talked to the people about learning about patient journey, their use of mobile phones, the support they're currently getting or not getting, and the challenges they are having, and so on. The insights were to help and inform the digital product strategy for this country and the surrounding countries. So we learned that one of the things that they do at their support group is for each person to contribute a specific amount of money each time they meet. The money will then either be given to one person in the group, or who might need the money more than others, or they create a project where they can all take part. For example, they might buy materials for sewing as a project and activities doing together. However, this sometimes also become one of the reasons some patients stop going to these support groups because they can't afford it. These stories and insights are all good. We understand their motivation of going or not going to a support group, which is often very beneficial for them to manage their conditions. However, it was unclear to us why it is common for support groups in this country to collect money within the group informally, not as a fee, but just to help. It was not something any of the people we talked to could tell us. It's not until I dig deeper into the history and politics and culture of the country, I discovered the root of this behavior called the Harambee culture. So Harambee means to pull together. So the spirit of self-help amongst Kenyans. It was introduced into Kenya immediately after their independence by their first president as a strategy to pull the country together to build a new nation, because with the government themselves, they can't just build the country back. They need the support of as a group, as a community. So this means it's common for individuals to volunteering contribute their resources towards a good communal, whether they're cash or labor. And for example, they will raise money for funeral, weddings, or medical bills through their community networks. So this background insights and the deeper why give us the full story, the holistic view of what we hear and observe during our research. But these are not something our participants could or would tell us. It's not because they refuse to, but because they might not see this as something special and worth picking up, or they wouldn't know that these kind of nuances are the things that we want to pick up because they are unique and could impact how we design and offer our products and service to them. So more importantly, is it very unlikely that these participants know that all these relevant triggers to what causing their behaviors. This is where we cultural experts comes in. So applying the holistic approach to your global strategy is also included in your internal operations. So internalizations or culturalization process touches all aspects of the business. So normally I wouldn't say it's horizontal, it's more not vertical, but it's more horizontal. It touches on every single teams and department. So from branding to product design, to marketing, to sales, or to operations, and to finance, and so on. Therefore, where possible, insights about your customers and markets should be shared across teams within organization. So to ensure a holistic approach to global growth, apart from sharing insights across different teams, silos between teams in global efforts should be avoided where possible. For those who work in a big organization, I know it's easy to say than done, but that's not to say it's not possible. And for example, sometimes when I do a conclude an outcome of my work with my clients, we always will make sure that involve other teams, even having them sit in the presentations and ask questions, or to join our workshop. And sometime in the final delivery, we will have, I will make sure that we have slides to talk about, oh, this touch on this team, or maybe this team, they will need to consider that as well. So they will link that together. And so your marketing strategy needs to be aligned with your product roadmap, and your product roadmap should align with your partnership strategy, for example, and your partnership strategy should consider your business proposition for a market. And you get the idea where I'm going to. So applying to a holistic approach in understanding the deeper levels of underlying cultural components and factors is very important. And understanding this aspect means you always have a strong and unchanged base to refer back to when you're crafting your global strategy, without having to worry that what might change next, what form it might change into, and what should I do. So when you have a clear understanding of this unshakable and underlying customer insights, cultural insights, you will be clear about your business essential priorities. That will help you to avoid running around like headless chicken, and when you're trying to go through this pandemic, as we all are. So I hope you find this talk insightful. Maybe what you can do is, end of the day, for a lot of people is to maybe tomorrow or tonight just have a cup of tea and to help us think about what do you think you know about your customers or might not know, customer in different markets, and what do you think your team or organization could do to be better in serving them. So if you have any thoughts or any questions, just just send the questions over now, later on at 8 o'clock, or after this conference is on.
Amazing.
That's me. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. Really awesome presentation. Once again, thank you very much. And if you do have questions, I have asked people to put them in the Q&A tab. We'll jump over there now and see what your thoughts were. So looks like there's a couple in here. Joanna has asked, what different types of user research techniques do you use to deeply understand all these different cultures, and how long for? I'm guessing that means how long are the studies? How long do you conduct the research studies for?
I can answer the first question, and then Joanna, you can clarify the second, how long for.
Yeah.
So yeah, different types of user techniques. So I think that's a thing about. So it's you can still use the typical user research approach. Like we still, depending on what are the objectives of the project and what products and industry and what we want to get out of, we still using the same, like face-to-face or one-to-one interviews or diary study, observations. So observation is one thing that I really care about a lot. That's why I say I go out to the countries to kind of go into their local supermarket, local market, although I was always being told off, like sometimes are quite dangerous to go by myself or just to explore these spaces. But then you get a sense of what, how local feels is. So yeah, you could do like ethnography and research, and also one-to-one diary study and all these different cultures. The difference between the normal user research and when I come to the culturalization is that you need to know what you need to look into, because there are a lot of things that you might not necessarily. So I have clients who came to me before saying, oh, we actually used an agency before and we spent a lot of money doing research in Germany and France, but we actually don't feel like we learned a lot of culturally related insights. And I look at the report, it's all about French say this, German say this, and it's really, they don't go into the details, into the cultural elements, the holistic view about, okay, what is the cultural elements? What are the things that could influence them? Is that the infrastructure? Is that the politics elements? Is that the whole traditions? And so you need to know what to look into to kind of make sure you find the right questions. You need to know what you look into, ask the right questions, and know what to pull out, because one of the things that your participants might tell you, it might kind of like, oh, there's nothing much about it. But if you dig know that is a special input, then you dig deep into it, then you might find some certain things. So she said, yes, how long do the study last? It depends again, if it is direct study, if it is because of something they could, we need a longer period, then we will get them to do longer. If it is just 2 days things, we'll get. So it's depending from a few days to sometimes a month throughout, but not intensely. Sometimes it's just depending on which products, which objectives.
And then Charlotte asks, what are the most common mistakes that your clients make?
First of all, the main one is I did localize already, and then what they meant is just changing the language, and then they think that is enough. That is what we meant, like localization or culturalizations. But even within, I have to take some slide out because it's only 25 minutes talk, but even between the basic fundamental level I talk about is the language. Even when you talk about language, you still have to make sure that you kind of have translate in the right context and provide a good quality. I recently just did a research for a client, which they have 80% of their contents are user generated or content. So they can't just translate as well as possible. So they have to use AWS, I think it's Amazon's translation. So it's good, but like Google Translate is not accurate. So when we go to France, like French is like, no, like this is not acceptable, and I'd rather use my not so good English than using this kind of, and just completely ruin the whole experience and trust they have.
Oh, excuse me.
You become very pixelated now.
No, I've got like a lamp up here, but it's not wanting to work right now. I had a question. So, I mean, obviously the pandemic, when you talk about globalization of products and services, like a lot of people have been kind of shifting their mindsets to thinking local, everything's done locally. Like, how's it been for you conducting global studies in a pandemic when, you know, is it just been obviously all remote, but like, has it affected kind of the focus of your work as well? Are people changing from globalizing their products as much to kind of thinking more locally? Oh, excuse me.
No, I still have been busy, and so yeah, I think first few months, I have to say, like everyone was thinking in March and April, like it's okay, by June we will we'll get back to the normal, and then we will go back again. So I think by June, May onwards, everyone knows this is not going anywhere. So business life have to goes on, right? And business have to go on, and you know, now everything is digital. People will be using the products even more. They will explore even more further out of their own countries, products and services and everything else as well. So it becomes even more important than, I would say actually the globalization elements, it become even more important than before pandemic, because everything is global, digital, and everyone has more time on the laptop than
of course,
using local services. Although, so although like you say, we can't travel, so we can't do the observation as much, but there are other different ways to do that as well. You can have my local teams kind of giving that insights and taking photos that can you do this, and you know, give as much as possible where we can.
Amazing. Excuse the massive drop in light. It's that lamp has decided.
The lights have enough.
It's had a long day, yeah. So thank you again for a wonderful presentation. We're going to go to the breakout room now, which is over on Zoom. But before we go, I want to say a big thank you. Obviously, to Sri, thank you very much for closing the day for us and for an awesome presentation. But thanks to all of our speakers and our sponsors who we wouldn't have been able to make this conference work without you all. So please do put a virtual round of applause together for every speaker for the day. And all of our panelists from Google too. And then if you can, please fill out the form that's just popped out to let us know how you found Global Experience Live today, Global Experience Summit today, and the Product Live track. With just a little pop up there. So once again, thank you to everyone for joining us. We're going to head over to the Zoom call. You can join it through that networking room. And if you're coming back tomorrow, we look forward to welcoming you back for one whole last final day, all about leading product and executing and delivering product design. So excited to welcome you all back. Thanks again, and good night from me.
We dance.